The Locust Fields by Paul Davies. Book 1, Aaron. No one on that warm, sunny summer's day could have foretold the orgy of wanton death and destruction that was set on a collision course towards the peaceful kingdom of Mercia. Mercia had not always been peaceful, but today all that had been put behind them, as a beautiful young woman stood aloft before the crowd who had gathered to see her coronation. Since the end of the Baron Wars, which had ravished the land, the old king had died, leaving his eldest daughter to ascend the throne. Today Queen Catherine would be crowned. Standing silently, her long brown hair and plain white dress dancing in the light breeze, she did not smile. She was concentrating too much on the words she would have to say in her promise, but her beauty shone through. Sitting down on a throne which was covered by a cloak of imperial purple edged with white and black, she looked small, surrounded by the members of the Council of 10, who would be presenting the symbols of office. The two most senior members would crown her. Watching intensely from the side of the stage was Prince Sebastian, her husband, who now headed the royal army, and her younger brother, Prince Tegan, battle commander of her army in the field, supported as ever by the never-aging General Lord Cogan. For the most part, smiles covered the faces of the onlookers, both on the stage and in the crowd. An older-looking gentleman, who disliked being pushed and jostled by the crowd, knew, if he had not been so outspoken, he would also be a member of the Council of 10. But today was a day not even Mortimer could find fault in. Lifting the crown high over the head of Catherine, who was now holding a sword in her right hand and golden globe in her left, the two elderly members of the council said in unison, "We now crown you Queen Catherine the Fourth of Mercia, defender of the people, keeper of the peace, the light to lead us to peace and prosperity." They both lowered the heavy and rather uncomfortable crown onto her head. Standing back, they joined the crowd in the calls of "Long live the Queen, may she prosper and rule well." A smile spread across her face as she acknowledged the cheers, trying to nod and balance the crown on her head at the same time. No one watching the happy scene would have imagined in their wildest and darkest dreams the horrors which were set to befall upon this and every country in the world in the following years. Chapter 1. The setting sun cast shadows from the trees on top of the small hill. Tegan sat upon his sturdy battle horse, watching the activity below. Soldiers of all shapes and sizes were working hard to gather the bodies of the fallen. The fresh smell of sweat and blood filled his nostrils. In the air hung a hint of fear. "I want this place clear by full darkness, so all who can get a night's sleep," Tegan said over his shoulders. He heard Cogan pass on the relevant orders to the officers behind him. He knew this was not needed, but reinforcing the orders would keep tired minds on the task, and not wondering about the events of the day. What a day! Just after the noon hour, without warning, the enemy had fallen upon them. Despite their numbers, the scouts had not seen them, so there had been no warning, and they were not like any enemy which had encountered before. They were lizard-like creatures, with hard scales and sharp claws, which they used to rip and tear. They stood on two legs like men, but taller, and fought with a fury which had taken them by surprise. Cogan, life general of the kingdom of Mercia, edged his horse beside Tegan's. Cogan was a man whose eyes gave nothing away, tall and rugged looking. Tegan had known Cogan all his life. As a youngest brother of the Queen Catherine, his first request had been for Cogan to advise him. That had been over 10 years ago. "Two men are approaching, leading horses. They look out of place here," Cogan informed him. Tegan watched them slowly making their way through the soldiers. The odd couple were a short, fat man with a bald head, of middle years. Alongside him a tall, thin man who looked a great age, with a long beard that had grown below his waist. He wore a tall pointed hat and cape which covered everything, and dragged on the floor. At his hip an oversized sword. They made their way up the steep slopes with a surprising speed. If I did not know better, I'd say he was a wizard, Kogan muttered under his breath. Tegan nodded in agreement. My lord, Prince Tegan, defender of the realm, the first knight of Queen Catherine, the wizard announced from about 10 feet away. Both men gave elaborate bows. Soldiers close by watched the two, easing their swords, but not drawing them. Are you lost, wizard? Kogan asked in a flat voice. I am neither lost nor a wizard, my lord. Tegan dismounted, taking off his gloves and tucking them behind his sword belt. Manners cost nothing, and he always tried to put people at ease. Kogan joined him. You are in a dangerous place, away from your village. What is your business here? Why, to see you, my lord, the tall man replied. Tegan made no comment, so the man continued. I had a dream in which I had to meet you and relay a message. I had a nagging feeling to come late in the day. Looking around, his eyes seemed to catch everything. Lucky I did. What message? Kogan asked, stepping forward a little. Behind him the lifeguard, still mounted, gave the impression of alertness. You are to find a boy with fire in his eyes, and will be accompanied by death. The old man now looked very sick and pale. What is your name? My name is Mortimer Macmillan, once a professor of University of Life. Then bowed again, continued, and I remember you, Lord Kogan, Life General and Commander of the Lifeguard, Protector of Her Majesty the Queen. You were an old man then. How old are you now? Kogan asked in a low voice. You know him? Tegan could not keep the surprise from his voice. Yes, I recognized his voice when he started talking, but that was a lifetime ago. I cannot believe he is still alive, Kogan answered without any emotion. The field is clear, my Lord General, an officer told Kogan, and the troops are ready to depart. Very well, carry on. I thank the men for their good quick word, Kogan replied. Tegan walked to his horse, gathering his reins to mount. He turned to the two men standing beside their horses. Of course you must join us. This is no place to be out at night, and I'm curious about this message. With little ceremony on the part of the officers and lifeguards, accompanied by Mortimer and his companions, made their way through the dark night. Only the snorts from the odd horse and the thud of hooves on hard-packed earth breaking the silence. The camp was laid out for defence. Sentries posted at points to give good warning of any attack. The horses were tied in picket lines, not too far from the riders. At the centre of the camp stood a number of tents. The largest had stoves smoking away and large cauldrons steaming on top of each. A short distance from this stood two smaller tents, one with two guards standing outside. Drawing up and dismounting, Tegan gave his reins to a groom who had appeared from nowhere. He patted Midnight, his loyal horse, as it was led away. Please join us for some warm, spicy wine and a chance to tell us about this message and its meaning, Tegan said, holding the tent flap open to invite the two men in. Kogan followed them, deep in conversation with Captain Johnson, a tall, slim man who commanded the personal guard of Prince Tegan. Both men sat at the low table in the middle of the tent without invitation, stopping talking to watch the two visitors sit down opposite them. Tegan sat at the head. After all present had been served with wine and food placed on the table, Tegan looked directly at the old stout man next to Mortimer. Well, sir, could you introduce yourself, please? The man choked as he took a gulp of the sweet wine. Yes, of course, my lord, he replied quickly, wiping his chin with his sleeve. How rude of me, forgetting my manners. I am Jupiter Hargreave. I am the mayor of our village, Lockley, 3 days' ride from here. He glanced around at all looking at him. Thank you, Tegan replied with a nod. Then his eyes turned to Mortimer. Well, Mortimer, it seems you have the message, and I hope some meaning. Mortimer took a deep breath, combing his long beard a few times. I really do not know what more I can say. You must find a boy with fire in his eyes and will be accompanied by death. I lead an army. Death accompanies me every day. Tegan laughed as he put his wine goblet out for a refill. But what I want to know is what it means and why it should concern me. Do you know this boy? Kogan asked, speaking for the first time. No, but I think I would recognise him again from my dream, Mortimer replied. It was so vivid. Where do you think we would find this boy? Tegan asked. To the west, my lord. Well, we are heading in that direction, Tegan said in a tired voice. The events of the day were catching up on him, but he knew he still had a lot to sort out before he could get his head down. I would like you to accompany you, if you do not mind, my lord, Mortimer asked, his voice full of confidence. Tegan looked at him as if trying to see the inner soul of the man, then nodded himself. Very well. Standing, he said, Captain, can you arrange somewhere for the two gentlemen to sleep? Sire, Jupiter hesitated. I need to return to my village. Nodding, Tegan turned to Captain Johnson. Could you also detail 2 lancers to escort Mr. Hargreave back to his village in the morning, and then turn back to the 2 men? If you excuse us, I have things to discuss with my officers. It will be done, sir, Captain Johnson replied, as the 2 men, bowing several times, made their way out of the tent, following the captain.